Welcome to the Future of Fitness, a global virtual event to help the fitness industry navigate today's world and reinvent its future. I'm Pamela Kufahl, Director of Content for Club Industry, and this event is brought to you by Club Industry and Cybec, part of the QuestX Wellness Group. During this two-day event, you will hear ideas and best practices from some of the best minds in the fitness industry from around the world. Some of our speakers will be brand new faces for you, and others will be industry veterans. We're excited to share all of their insights on a variety of topics that you've told us you want to learn more about. Make sure to click on the Agenda tab on the main page after each session is over to choose the next session you want to attend, since we have concurrent sessions at certain times of the day. If you miss a session, they will be available on demand the next day, so come back here to view them. We have added some networking sessions into the agenda as well, and you'll want to attend those. Please also go to the Sponsor Hub to see all of the helpful resources that our generous sponsors have for you. Speaking of sponsors, we would like to thank our sponsors for being a part of this event. Their desire to help educate the industry is noteworthy during this challenging time we're all experiencing. One of our sponsors is Uscreen, and they're going to get us started with a short message and the introduction of our first session for the day. And I will see you back here momentarily.
Build your own online fitness video streaming business, no coding skills required. With Uscreen, you can easily charge for your live streams, build a stunning video on-demand catalog, and handle all your customers' needs in one place. Set up your own professional website. It's all plug and play. Then upload your fitness videos to your catalog page and create custom filters to help your users find relevant content. Of course, Uscreen also supports live streaming. Your fitness video streaming website also comes with sophisticated built-in marketing tools. Launch your own branded mobile and TV apps and your own Apple Watch app. Uscreen is a powerful, all-in-one solution. Join more than 5,000 wildly successful fitness brands who are already running their own video streaming business on Uscreen.
Hello everyone, my name is PJ and I'm the founder of Uscreen, and I've had the pleasure of working with over 1,000 fitness businesses to help them launch their own video streaming services online. And I would like to introduce you to the first session of the Future of Fitness event. This fireside chat is between Pam Kufahl, the Content Director of Club Industry, and Brent Darden, Interim President and CEO of IHRSA. Brent is a former club owner and operator who has taken the role of leading IHRSA through this turbulent era in our industry as the association does an executive search for a new CEO. This conversation focuses on how COVID-19 has impacted commercial clubs, IHRSA's efforts to help the industry, and where the industry is headed, and more. Let's give a nice and warm welcome to both Pam and Brent.
Well, thank you, PJ and Uscreen, for that introduction. I'm Pamela Kufahl with Club Industry, and I'm here with Brent Darden of IHRSA. And thank you for joining us, Brent, and thank you for IHRSA for being thank you to IHRSA for being a part of the event with 3 great sessions, 2 additional sessions. That one you'll hear right after this one-on-one with Brent, and another one will occur tomorrow. So thank you for being such a big part of the Future of Fitness virtual event.
No, our pleasure. Thank you for including us, Pam.
Yeah. So we only have 20 minutes and we have so much that I would love to talk to you about. So I want to just go ahead and dive right into our first question so we can get started and hear a little bit more about, your perception of what's going on in the industry right now. Obviously, COVID-19 is the biggest focus for everybody right now. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about what you think are some of the biggest impacts that COVID-19 has had on the fitness industry globally.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I'm going to speak pretty high level. I think Club Industry and many others have done a great job of talking to people about, the day-to-day operational things of how it's affecting our industry. So I'm going to speak at a maybe a little bit higher level if I could. and share some data and statistics. So we'll start with here in the United States, and then we'll talk a little more globally. But we know as of the end of December of 2020, from March through December of 2020, that approximately 17% of US health clubs had already closed. And if we try and break that down a little further, it's 14% of gyms, sort of the bigger box clubs, and 19% of studios that had gone out of business. So that total number is about 6,800 clubs that have closed by year end. And I was asked earlier in a conversation earlier today, what are we expecting over the next several months? And I do think, unfortunately, there will be a few more. The good news is, the vaccine's on the horizon, but the bad news is, it's still here right now. So I fully expect us to be over the 20 mark, in that 20 to 25% range of clubs here in the US. And then if we look, what does that mean from a revenue standpoint? For that same time period, we know that the industry lost about 58% of its total revenue, some like $20.4 billion that was lost as of the end of December. And of course, when you look across, Washington State and Oregon and California, where clubs have really been closed longer than in other parts of the United States, it's even more dramatic, right? And that's just the revenue. We've also lost 1.4 million jobs related to all these closures at all levels, from management to, group exercise to personal training and across the board. So our industry really has just been hit so hard. And then if we look globally, Pam, the numbers, I hate to say it, in some countries are even worse. So in China, for example, Deloitte just finished a big 200-page report that they collaborated with us on, and China lost 30 to 50% of gyms through the pandemic. If we look at Italy and Portugal, they're down 40 to 50% of club closures. And then just this last week, UK Active shared some research that they had done, and they're expecting to be down about 39% as far as the total number of clubs that have closed in those countries. So, I mean, those are really big numbers. And that's sort of on the worst end of the spectrum. If we move to the other more positive end of the spectrum, we can look at New Zealand and we can look at Australia, who, they really dealt with the pandemic fantastically. And correspondingly, they had very few club closures and they're still performing, quite well. So, there's some numbers about club closures, revenue loss, job loss, and then the end consumer, and I don't have this data for global numbers, but in the US, all those club closures really equate to about almost 12.5 million members that lost their gym. And so now they're looking, hopefully, for another gym to belong to, as well as other opportunities, to get their physical activity in. So that's the really bad news. Would you let me share a little bit of the good news before we move on?
Good news is always welcome.
Yeah. So again, Deloitte just published their report that we did in collaboration with them. And so as a third party, very credible, they did a report on the status of the China health and fitness market. And what we now know is that China is doing really, really well. So their rebound, their end of the year 2020 was better than their 2019 for most clubs. Now, I understand they lost a lot of clubs, right? So there's some consolidation, but the rebound in membership was really staggering. And Australia has said the same thing. Once the restrictions are lifted and the pandemic, is a little bit in the rearview mirror, there's a really quick up ramp to improved revenues and increased performance overall. So, that's on the horizon for us. Mm-hmm. To that point, as far as the impact on our industry, one thing I would say is, as I traveled around the world over the last 5 or 6 years, presenting it, whether it was in Russia or, China or Portugal, Brazil, wherever it was, didn't matter. Everybody complained about the saturation of the market, that there was just a lot of health clubs, and not many members for as many health clubs as were being put up. And so I think our industry was due for a little bit of a market correction. And I feel horribly because I have some clubs that I know the owners really well, and it's so sad to see them go under. But at the end, we kind of needed a market correction. I think it was going to happen maybe a little bit more out into the future, and this has kind of accelerated that. But that's one good sign that we had a little market correction. Another one is that, and Deloitte found this true in China, and I think we see it here in the US, there's this heightened awareness around health related to immunity, related to the benefits of exercise and being physically active and leading a healthy lifestyle. So, the society at large, they're elevating sort of their priority around and recognizing, I think more than ever, that there's a need to be physically active and mindful of their own well-being that's not been there before. Also, if you look at the financial markets, there's been a deluge of articles from the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Investment Quarterly over the last couple of months about all the economic signs that are trending up, right? We know the stock market's doing good. We know the private equity groups are looking to expand. Many of the large groups inside our industry are looking and growing right now. They're buying properties, they're launching new locations. So that all looks very good. And then, of course, the other thing is the pandemic has created some pent-up demand for members that have been at home, been trying the online workouts, and they're really ready to get back to that community and support of a gym. So I do think in very short window, as we all look forward around the world when the vaccines are taking hold, I think we got a big upsurge that's coming.
Yeah, so there's been some positives as well as some negatives, and probably the biggest positive is what you mentioned, that more and more people see how important being healthy is.
Right.
And for the industry, just understanding that that may not mean necessarily coming inside your brick and mortar store. So how do you, as a health club or gym, studio, YMCA, then reach out to those people who want to get healthier, maybe outside your walls as well.
Yes.
And in that same vein, I think the industry becoming considered more of an essential service is very important. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit to that. Why do you think the industry, or what do you think the industry needs to do to kind of reposition itself as an essential service?
Right. Well, that's obviously a really big question. And none of us probably included the word essential in many of our sentences pre-pandemic. And now it's definitely a big part of our culture and nomenclature, if you will. I was sharing with somebody the other day, if you collected a group of, let's say, US people, and you were talking about health and fitness, the harsh reality, Pam, is that only 2 of the 10 people in that group would be gym goers. But 10 out of 10 would be going to restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
10 out of 10 would be going to, different types of entertainment. 10 out of 10 would still be shopping. And so, on one hand, we need to somehow move our industry where much more of the population is concerned about gyms being closed. That's number one. To recognize that fact and appreciate that, we have about 22% of the population in the US that belong to clubs. And it varies depending on what country you're in. Some of the lower countries are down in the single digits. So we all have a long way, to grow that. I think that's point one. And of course, my vision is at some point, like so many other people, that, we'll get to a point where clubs are viewed as safe, inclusive, credible, of course, essential part of the healthcare continuum. And that we're viewed sort of as this resource, if you will, because we provide facilities and the support and that sense of community that we all know people need to reinforce and change their habits and behavior. That said, and here's where I'm sorry, I have to go on a little bit of a rant, but the truth is it's not about talking about our industry in sort of aspirational tones or using, I think new catchwords that I hear a lot about, ecosystems, and, we're creating new ecosystems. I'm not even sure I know what that means. And of course, crying, that we deserve to be considered essential or that we want to be part of the healthcare continuum. All of us have to do something about it. We have to do our part to change it to what we all want it to be. And frankly, as I was sharing before we started the video, it's not about IHRSA either. I mean, it really isn't. It's and I mean that sincerely, even as a CEO. IHRSA is a not-for-profit trade association, which is a vehicle to get some of these things done. That's it. And we need people to understand that if we want that, we got to participate with IHRSA so that they can provide sort of the leadership and the resources and the coordination. But in the end, the trade association is only as strong as the people that are sort of supporting it and doing all the work with it. And we've got to get them out, particularly right now around advocacy. And as we go forward around standards for facilities, certifications, and heaven forbid, because we all like to avoid the talk of licensure. But I think if we want to reach the heights that we want to be, certainly with the medical community, there's going to have to be some more regulation in our industry. And we need to make sure that we're leading the charge and the conversations about that rather than it being top down from the government. We need to educate the government on what those standards and qualifications need to be to reach the credibility. Because as an industry, we need to mature. I was talking with Chris Rondo at Planet just this morning about this very thing that, we've achieved some segmentation and differentiation in our industry, which is a sign that an industry is maturing, right? And we were laughing that it doesn't bother anybody that there's a McDonald's and there's a Three Forks and that there's a Motel 6 and there's a Ritz-Carlton. It also shouldn't bother anybody that there's a Planet and a Bay Club, a luxury inn, because that serves a lot of different audiences. And so again, I think we need to just change the dynamic that we're speaking from. And that starts with all of us sort of embracing the fact that although we want clubs to be successful, most of us in this business really want people to be active, healthy, and well. And taking our programs and so forth outside the four walls, as you alluded to, Pam, is definitely part of that equation. And it's also on all of us to accept the fact that you don't have to belong to a health club to be healthy and well. If we can support you outside our four walls, then that's what we need to do, for society at large. So, I think those are specific things that we can do about becoming essential. I think one is really figuring out, when we say we want to be part of the healthcare continuum, we want to have ties to the medical community. Okay, what are you doing in your club to actually get that accomplished? And I surveyed anecdotally and verbally about 60 clubs 2 weeks ago. And I asked them, tell me about best practices that you have to reach a population that is underserved, that either is handicapped physically or emotionally or mentally. And only about 5% of the clubs had something to share. So that's an example. When we say we want to become more medical and we want to tie with the medical community, yes, it's working with the insurance carriers, but it's also developing programs around these specific needs, whether that's cancer, Parkinson, whatever the case might be. So to really step up, if you will, and put something into action, we have to do that. That's one big thing. And then I think it's also changing the narrative around it where, again, as I alluded to before, it's not just about belonging to a club. We're about helping society at large be active and changing their behaviors and adopting healthy habits. And if that becomes our language, then all of a sudden, you don't have to belong to the gym down the street to be part of the conversation. You're like, oh, I eat healthy. Great. You're one of us. Oh, I run at home. Great. You're one of us. Oh, I do online streaming workouts. Great. You're one of us. And right now, we're not really considering all those people as sort of on the inside. And I think we have to change that.
Right. Yeah. Very, very good points. Very good points. So the industry needs to think of itself as so much broader than it currently does.
Yes.
In our last 5
I'll
minutes.
say one more point. I'm sorry. I told you I was going all around. I'm so passionate about this, but what we found through the pandemic is there really isn't anybody, none of the elected officials that we've talked to would debate the fact that being physically active and healthy is good for you. Nobody says that.
Mm-hmm.
So the disconnect isn't that they don't know. The disconnect is that they're not proactive about making sure that's happening. And so we need to change the narrative and have the conversations in a different way. And that needs to really start with us. And when I say us, it's you and me, Pam, having this conversation, but it's also everybody out there in their own backyard,
Mm-hmm.
Being appreciative and encouraging of whatever type of physical activity in whatever mode they're getting it is awesome.
Right.
Right.
Great. So we've got about 4 minutes left here, and
Oh.
so many more questions that I wanted to ask you, Brent. But I think one of the really important things I want you to talk about is some of the efforts that IHRSA is doing to help the industry. In particular, your lobbying efforts, and most importantly, the GEMS Act. I really want you to talk to that, because that's something that's really top of mind right now that people really need to get involved in. So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes. Yeah. So the GEMS Act is a $30 billion fund, $30 billion that's intended to provide grants. So it means it doesn't need to be repaid to club operators in the health and fitness industry, regardless of size. It can be a small operator, can be a large operator. I think the limits on it are $20 million per facility. And I won't get into all the specifics because people can read that online as it begins to come out. And the question that we've been asked a lot recently is, what about the GEMS Act? Is it really going to make it into this bill that's being introduced right now? And the reality is, no, it's probably not going to be in this reconciliation bill. That's really kind of been closed. There's been over, I believe, 400 amendments proposed to add on to that bill. And they keep saying, no, we're not doing anything else. This is all about, vaccines and funding those kind of efforts. So what we do know is the opportunity is coming up again. We don't have a future date for that, but we know in the next coming months, there's going to be more relief bills. And so we're trying to make sure we're positioned and in place for the next one so that we can get that included for us going forward. And oh, by the way, it's not just about the GEMS Act. You and I have been around long enough, Pam, where we know we never really have had the voice with advocacy that we wanted. And we have more of a voice now than we've ever had. The GEMS Act already has, I believe, as of this morning, 44 sponsors. We've never had more than 21, I think, in the past. And so we're laying the groundwork for not just the GEMS Act, but as we go forward, other things. When we get congressmen and women on board with us and aware that we exist and that we have a need, we need people to help us do that. One way, if you're listening, that you can do that is you can go to IHRSA.org/dashboard or the GEMS Act. And there's a one-click campaign. Truly, it takes 2.5 minutes. You put in your address, it auto-populates who your senator is, who your congressman is, and the letter's already written, and you hit send and it sends it automatically. I mean, it is that easy. And we just need a lot of people to get out there and help us get that message out.
And we have some people watching this who are YMCAs and park and rec facilities and university rec centers. Can they go up there and do
Absolutely.
the same thing?
Yes, it's not the page is not at all only limited to IHRSA. Doesn't matter whether you're a member of IHRSA or not. Doesn't matter what type of facility you are. You can be an organization. You can be an individual. You can be your grandma. It's fine. Okay. We need everybody to help us out that we can get.
Great. That's fantastic. Yeah, I think hopefully that act will get passed at some point here, tacked on to another bill perhaps, or another relief act perhaps as well. Thank you so much, Brent. I wish we had like twice the time because I had several more questions, but maybe we'll have to do this again. And I know you do your 5 minutes with Brent Darden every week. So if you haven't signed up for that, everybody, please go up to the IHRSA website and sign up for that, because it's a lot of good information in a 5-minute short clip brought to you by Brent. And thank you so much, Brent. I really do appreciate your time. I know you are extremely busy. You've got so much going on there, IHRSA. If you guys haven't checked out IHRSA.org, please go up there and just check out all the things that they're doing, some new organizations and committees that they've got put together. So they're doing a lot for the industry. And thank you, Brent, for helping to lead that. Thank you again, Brent. I really do appreciate it. And everybody, you can head back to the agenda and select your next session now. We really appreciate you being here and listening to what Brent has to say. Thank you.